So, welcome. Thank you so much for coming out on this on this rainy night. It seems to have conspired against us, but I really love intimate talks as well. Sometimes it's a nice way to facilitate more discussion. My name is Patricia Miranda. I'm the director and founder of Miranda Arts Project Space, and I'm also the founder of the Collaborative Workspace Residency Program, of which this event tonight is a culmination of the Residency Program. The Residency Program is basically an opportunity for artist teams, and it just needs to be more than one person, right? It could be two, it could be five, whatever, who are interested in collaborating together. Maybe they've collaborated before, or maybe they haven't. And basically what they do is submit a proposal, and I review the proposals and kind of think about what I'm interested in and what they're doing and how it fits with the space and the mission and everything else. And then they basically get this space as a studio for the duration, for a month. And then at the end of the month, it culminates in either an exhibition. This is the 6th residency. I'm really incredibly excited to say. We started in 2012. So there's been installation, there's been theatrical performance, there's been massage, there's been a month of social practice events where we had even like burlesque dancing lessons and a coffee house and different kinds of things. So we've had all sorts of different things. I'm really interested in artist-run spaces and artist-run activities where artists get together and create opportunities for each other and create community. And so that's sort of my sort of personal mission. I had a gallery here for many years, and I was the director at a college gallery for 4 years. And when I came back here, I said, you know, I'm really interested in doing something that's a little more interactive, more collaborative, where I can engage in a different way rather than have, you know, sort of things that only sit on the wall, as much as I love things that sit on the wall. It's not that those aren't wonderful too, but to have another kind of engagement with the materials. So I'm incredibly excited because I knew Margery and Andrea before, which is not why they got the residency, but it certainly gave me more information about them. I kind of had a little bit of insight into their work and was very excited about the drawing project because I'm very interested in drawing as an idea. And I knew Andrea, had worked with Andrea. She curated an exhibition on drawing and neuroscience that I had implemented at Concordia College when I was the gallery director there. So I was very interested in connecting their project with a very sort of a much larger discourse on drawing that's going on in both the artistic and the scientific community. And Andrea can say much more intelligent things about that than I will. So I thought it would be interesting for her to be in conversation with the artist. And rather than me take a long time, these are very accomplished people. So I've passed around, we've put bios around, and if you don't have one, we'll pass around some more so that you can read about the amazing accomplishments and things that these artists do. And I hope you'll look at the website. They also have the zine, which is available. We will also videotape this talk. It'll be on our YouTube channel, and we'll have a catalog and stuff so that the conversation and discourse about this exhibition and about this project can continue on outside of just the physical space. And just one thing to say about that, I mean, one of the things about today is there's so much going on and there's so many things that exhibitions and projects really do live on outside of just the physical space. And we really hope to continue this dialogue. And I'm always hoping that the residencies are the beginning of a conversation rather than, you know, this is like not just the end of a conversation, but the beginning of a continuing conversation. So if you're interested in what goes on here, you can sign up for our mailing list. We have a thing outside, and take a look at the other things that we do. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Margery and Andrea Kantrowitz, who's our special guest. And did everyone get one of these? Is there anyone? If you want, I'll come over and hand those. Okay, thank you so much. Welcome.
So I walked in here for the first time since you have started working yesterday, and my overwhelming impression as I walked in was I was reminded of children playing together in a sandbox and the total joy and delight of that experience. And the more that we talked, that was kind of confirmed that there was something about that experience of really recovering that pure joy and play of childhood as adults. So I want to thank you for giving me that experience and just walking in. So I'm an artist, but I have long have been very interested in how art can help to shed light on human thought. And it's something that I studied in college, and more recently I went back and got a doctorate in art and cognitive psychology to really understand how the way that the field of cognitive psychology as it has developed, particularly over the past 20 years, really has a lot to say about what we do and the kind of thinking that we do as artists. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about in relationship to your work that was really brought to mind was the whole idea of embodied cognition. So earlier on in psychology in the 20th century, the brain was thought of as a kind of computing machine. And the more that we actually understand how the brain works, the more that we understand that it's something very different from that. And that we don't just think with what's in our heads, but we think with what's, our gut. We think of what's inside of us, and we think with our whole bodies as we move through space. And that when human beings, evolution has sort of designed us to be thinking in action. And I think that that's something that we see on the walls all around us, is how Margery and Andrea were really thinking together in their activity, and not just sort of in words on paper. There's something very different that happens. So one of the things I just wanted to start, and then we'll have a conversation. We had some really interesting dialogue yesterday, and I'd really like to pursue that. But one of the really interesting things in psychology, there's two things I want to just let you know about before we sort of start talking about your project, if that's okay. There's a whole new field of something called gesture studies, where psychologists look at why do we talk with our hands. And there's actually some thought that verbal language has emerged from gesture, that originated with gesture. And when you think of the way that animals kind of communicate with each other through gesture, there seems to be a lot of evidence for that. So a psychologist named Susan Golden Meadow, about 20 years ago, was interested in Piaget's conservation of volume task. So the idea there is that if you show a child a tall, thin glass of water and a short, fat glass of water, and you ask them how much is, which one has more, the child will say, well, this one has more because it's tall, and this one has less because it's short. At a certain point, you ask a child, which one has more, and they'll kind of go like this. Well, this one has more because it's tall, but this one has less because it's short. But they're doing, the gestures that they're doing are a mismatch, right? And they might hesitate a little bit in their speech. And it turns out when they start doing that, they're just about to figure out, oh, they're the same, because when you pour the water from the tall glass, skinny glass into the short fat glass, it's actually the same amount of water. So what she figured out is when people are gesturing, their gestures will betray an understanding that's in advance of what they can yet articulate. So that, and this was true for children, for adults, and if you make anybody sit on their hands and ask them a difficult question, they're going to have a harder time answering you. And people who are blind from birth, when they're talking, will gesture in much the same way that sighted people do. And that teachers, when they use gesture in their teaching, can really greatly affect the learning of their students. It can be very effective, and they can actually teach their students to make specific kinds of gestures which will help advance their understanding. So I think this is relevant. I hope you see how this is relevant to the work in front of us, in that what you have here are the traces of gesture. And I think that all drawing in a way is that, but I think that your drawing really kind of exemplifies the way that we kind of feel our way through the world as humans. So that's one of the things that I was really struck by. And I don't know if any of you had the same feeling that I did coming in here and just sort of wanting to join in. Like you see, it just looks like that you guys had like so much fun. And there's a kind of visceral response. I think that your work seems to have come from kind of a very deeply felt place, and as an observer, you kind of participate in that. I want to share just a little bit more neuroscience, which is that there's something to that. So, anybody have that experience of when you look at these marks and you sort of, yeah? And that's actually something that's really great about drawing, is that everybody has experience of drawing. Like, you know, there's this kind of childlike mark making that you're reminding us of that's really quite lovely. So, I'm looking at my husband. When was it? It was like somewhere in like the late 90s when there were these neuroscientists in Italy who had these little macaque monkeys in a cage, and they had all these electrodes planted in their brains because they're trying to understand grasping, the basic. They were just looking at motor neurons, and so they had attached this, and they had all these little needles going up and down when these motor neurons were activated. And they weren't thinking that they were, that's all that they were looking at, was this sort of grasping thing. And then one day there was a technician in the office, and it's not clear if it was a bowl of candy or ice cream. There's different versions of the story. But anyway, the lab technician sort of reached over for whatever it is that was yummy to eat. And as he was taking it, he noticed that the needles were like going crazy. Like and then he turned around and the monkey's just like this. Nothing's happening. And he did it again, and the same thing happened. And the monkey was not moving, but somehow something in his brain was activated as if he was moving. There was some sort of simulation going on in the monkey's brain. And it turns out that there are a specific kind of motor neurons called mirror neurons, which help us understand what somebody else is doing, what another individual is doing. And so monkeys have them, other primates have them, and we have them. And so when people have theorized that part of the pleasure of drawing is looking at drawing, is that you can sort of imagine yourself making that mark, right? And I think that, I really feel that when I look at your drawing, it's like, that one over there, which I guess you were telling me yesterday that you did blind. Yeah. And you can really feel, as I'm looking at it, I can feel my hand, what it would be like to make that mark. So I think that's a really interesting aspect of sort of the pleasure of viewing these drawings. We get to join in with the pleasure of making, that you had making the drawings. I guess with that, you had some really interesting things in your statement, your artist statement that we were talking about yesterday, and I guess I'd like to have you guys maybe talk a little bit about that. So these drawings very much came from a common interest in the body, right? Can you tell us a little bit about, you came in with a certain plan of how you were going to approach this collaboration?
Well, I guess we knew we wanted to be in the same room. We had been mailing drawings back and forth because we don't live in the same place, and we knew something would happen that would be important if we could be in the same room and drawing together. And so that was the first thing. Otherwise, we kind of just made lists of ideas of what we'd like to try doing. We sort of expanded upon that and left some things out and added more things, negotiated what we would do. So it was sort of a process that evolved over the month.
But the important thing was, I think, once we sort of developed a direction of let's try doing it this way, once we started drawing, all of that went away. So it was just, okay, that's the seed that was planted of what we're going to do, but then there was no thinking really going on.
Kind of like making some rules, like if you're doing a drawing, you make some rules for the drawing, and then you can forget about the rules, but you just know you maybe go like a green and a pink crayon.
Because when my daughter asked a question when we came in, which was, when she was watching the video, I said, well, how did you decide who should do what when you're drawing? But there is no deciding, you know, you're just responding. And this is what the big thing, the difference between working via mail is if you're in your own studio, you get a package in the mail, you're by yourself, and you're just responding to that.
But when you're working in the same room with another person, see, I'm gesturing. When you're working with this other person, and it's almost like, you know, like, because you respond to your own marks that you make, your own actions, but when somebody's throwing other actions in there, it's all this stuff happening at the same time that you have to negotiate and respond to. So it was really interesting, and that was really interesting to me, I think.
A conversation of a different kind.
Yeah, it was just like this, exactly, it's just like this information that's simultaneously showing up while you're drawing, which was really different, a very different experience.
Another thing that was interesting about it, which I think we told you yesterday, was, which we didn't notice until we watched our own video, was that when we made that drawing, which was probably 2 weeks in or something.
Yeah.
We were unconsciously sharing our materials back and forth. You can see Margery's hand come and take a blue pastel from me, and I'm taking the brush from her. We're just, without knowing that we're doing it.
Without discussion or question. It was just, it's almost like we became one, which is weird, but it was like we became one activity towards this drawing, which is also a very different experience, collaborating.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting when you were talking about that, because I think that what we as artists kind of have to contribute. There's this really famous Donald Rumsfeld quote from way back when about help me out here.
The known knowns, that one?
Right, yeah. Now, so it's
there are the known knowns.
There's the known knowns, and then there's the things that we know that we don't know. But then there's the things that we don't know that we don't know. And why I love that is because I think what we as artists, and what you're talking about very much right now, are the things that we know that we don't know that we know. And how art can kind of bring that out. And I think it's wonderful the way you have this unconscious working process that was happening. And lots of times people talk, artists will say, well, I'm just intuitive, And so what does that really mean? And in terms of neuroscience, or what we know about the brain, what that means is that what you're conscious of at any given moment is only like the tip of the iceberg in what you're aware of in a much, with your whole body and with parts of your mind that you don't have that direct conscious control or awareness of. And so you're able to access that through this process, right? So I think that you kept saying that we weren't thinking, we were just doing, but there is another kind of thinking that obviously was going on, but it's not what we usually kind of call thinking, think of as thinking. So I think that's really interesting, and the way you had to, I think the speed at which you had to respond to each other very much kind of brought that up. Yeah, it sort of forced you to be in that place.
Yeah, there were some physical aspects to this as well that that had to do with the speed too, because I draw with 2 hands, but Andrea's taller than I am, so she has a longer reach. So there was logistic things of like, how do I get over there? How do I get over there? There's an arm there, and she's uncovering twice the uncovering twice the territory that she is. So you do have to. This is something that I experienced as well, is you have to give up a certain amount of control over the entire thing, because you're compromising constantly, almost with you, not really compromising what you're doing, but you have to take into account this other thing that's happening too, and this army that's kind of as you're drawing. And it was really interesting when we were doing the blind ones that way, because you had to feel where the paper was, in addition to being aware where the other person was and what they were doing and where you were going. So there was bumping into, and it was just a very interesting experience.
Those were interesting too, because when we opened our eyes after doing each of these drawings, there was a little gasp from each of us. We were really surprised.
Surprised what they look like, because you're just drawing, and in response to the other, where you think the other person is too. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something, like, we think of drawing about being about vision, and that, you have these 5, what is perception? It's your 5 senses, and so we're talking just about vision. But in fact, I think one thing that they're really understanding more and more is that we are constantly kind of synthesizing all kinds of perceptions, not just visual, but also spatial. So these drawings, I love these two drawings, and I think it really shows a kind of spatial intelligence that was in play, even though you were kind of blindfolded. There's a way that you can really sense how you are feeling out the space without being able to use your eyes to do that. Yeah. So there was something that you were talking about. So in terms of the body, right? The body was really the source of a lot of this imagery, or the sort of basis of your collaboration was interest in the body.
That's something we talked about yesterday that I found fascinating, which is like halfway through, or maybe even more than halfway through, we realized that the way each of us deals with the body and with our imagery, or the imagery we were using, was totally different. Like, you know, because we were talking about the row up here is specific body parts, let's say, attending to certain body parts, and I kept saying to Andrea, do you feel pain? Is that our muscles? And you know, she said no, and I kept saying, but how can you draw like the inside of your body? But what we realized was that Andrea's sense of the body was very internal, whereas mine was very much like almost the surface, and how, you know, moving through space, and you know, what's on the other side of my skin, you know, like if your skin, you know, so it was a very different approach to the body that we realized that we were bringing to this body awareness imagery.
It was kind of an amazing revelation that
Yeah.
halfway through, like, I don't think we would ever have come to that without working for 2 weeks and driving back and forth and living together and talking all the time, especially realized this.
Yeah.
That what you meant by the body was to
that our
thing.
thoughts on the body are different.
But then you started talking about these different kinds of perceptions.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking about the five senses, right? So psychologists talk about that as being exteroception, right? It's these perception outward. And there's two other forms of perception that psychologists talk about, and that are more sort of body awareness, but there are two very different kinds of body awareness, and it was so interesting to me that you guys kind of diverged in that way, because there's proprioception, which is very much what Margery's talking about, which is awareness of your body moving through space, so the parts of your body. So when you're going like this or whatever, you're sort of feeling this, your sense of balance, and how maybe you're affected by, even as you're walking through the jungle or wherever it is that we first started walking around on 2 feet. You know, you're kind of aware of your relationship between your body and the environment. So that's proprioception. And then there's another form of perception, which is interoception, which is really about the awareness of your internal organs and your respiration, your heartbeat, those kinds of things. And that's very connected to your awareness of emotion. And so in the 19th century, sometimes called the father of modern psychology, William James, had a theory about that. And what he said is that your heartbeat starts to increase. You sense that there's something rustling in the bushes. Maybe you aren't even consciously aware. You don't see what that is, but immediately your heartbeat starts racing, the adrenaline starts pumping, and then you become afraid, right? So that it's not like, oh, there's a saber-toothed tiger over there, I should get ready to run. That's not what happens, right? And if it did, none of us would be here. So this was his theory in the 19th century, and then in the 20th century, as sort of psychology got more scientific, there was, people said, oh, William James is wrong. That's not really how it works. It's propositional. We kind of evaluate our environment, we make judgments, that's how it works. It turns out that now that we really have the tools to see how these things function in the brain, that William James was actually right. and that emotion comes out of our physical responses to these kind of subliminal cues that we're getting from our environment. So it was really interesting to me the way that one of you was really, that Margery was really focused on that proprioceptive sense of the body, and that Andrea was focused on this more interoceptive. So I just was very getting tight. I like that.
And you gave us some words for what we were
So I'm sort of wondering, like, how, a little bit more, I'd like to know about how you negotiated some of the differences that emerged, and how that worked.
Well, let me see.
negotiating.
Yeah, negotiating. I mean, there were some moments, let's say, that were more difficult than others, but we kind of, well, I don't know.
I think we talked about stuff a lot.
Yeah, we talked about
decided, yeah, do we want to go ahead with our plan for this day? Do we want to do the drawings of,
And we didn't seem to mind, and this again, something, yeah, so if I, like, on this set here in the center,
that's the day I got my way.
Right. Andrew started on one side, I started on the other, and we grew and passed each other. And did we go back again? I can't remember. We just passed each other once.
Yeah.
And then Olivia was asking me, well, did she get mad if you covered something of hers up, or if you destroyed it or broke it apart? Did she get mad? But no, because that's kind of what the whole point of it was.
Yeah, that was something we had agreed on.
Yeah, we had
even when we
agreed
were
to
doing drawings back
Yeah.
and forth. Thankfully, we were both very open to not worrying about if someone covers the other
Yeah, and that has
favorite part.
Right.
The favorite part has to go anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere regardless of what you're doing, but
Yeah.
that's also part of the giving up control
Mhm.
and compromising, saying, okay, let's see what happens and not feel like it has to be one way or the other.
But you did something you didn't really want to do, so we had negotiations. Sometimes I did something I didn't really want to do.
Right.
Like this was listening to, I wanted to see the drawing, just the sensation of listening to music, maybe music that we didn't necessarily like too well.
Right.
AC/DC and Iron Maiden was this one. Sorry, neighbor. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what other negotiations that we did. Probably about meals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think it was just, we were both willing to give up control. I think that's what basically, so we just sort of moved in and around each other.
I think we usually agree almost 100%
We did agree a lot, yeah.
about when to finish them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how
Well,
you know when something's
what we
done?
would do is, at some, like, after going back and forth, we'd step back.
Mhm.
And if one of us, well, okay, so like say these would be here, we'd be over there, one of us might come and put some more information on, and when if Andrea did that, I didn't stop her. If she felt something else needed to be put on, and I did the same thing, and you didn't seem to care. So, it's like, we just sort of let it grow that way.
But I usually liked what you put there and seemed to
Yeah.
like what I added.
Right.
And we made sure we kept the music was playing while we were doing that, so that all the marks were coming from that sensation of listening to AC/DC and Iron Maiden.
There's a way of getting each other kind of synced up. It seems like that's sort of what's happening.
Well, it changes, we both react to music, so it changes your body, your nervous system reacts to music, right?
Yeah.
You can tell us.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you see, like, in many cultures, like, everybody sings. Like, just about everybody draws, but everybody sings. And it's a way of getting, a group of people in harmony, right? Together, so, yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how much more, what I'm really interested in, one of the other things that we didn't get to talk about last time we met, but is how do you feel, or do you feel that this experience has changed your own relationship to drawing as individuals?
But for me, I think that's something I have yet to find out. I have to go and do my own drawing. I imagine that it has. I don't see how it would influence how I draw, just the whole experience of working together like this. It just adds more information and more access to different parts of my nervous system or something. I'm always interested in that anyway, in my drawing, and so I think it will likely have enriched it and broken it open a little bit, which I think is neat. And we'll continue to draw together.
Yeah, we still have work.
Do you think it'll change here?
I imagine, yes. I mean, I can't imagine that it wouldn't. I'm not sure how. As I said, as Andrew said, I won't really know that until I start going to work, because I haven't worked alone, for a while. But I imagine that it will definitely have an effect on what I do, or influence what I do. We still have drawings that we sort of stopped working on for this residency that continue this back and forth.
I think it's definitely going to add to our collaborative drawing practice, because the experience, the intense experience of being together and working has added all these new ideas and revelations, like the ones you were just identifying for us. Interoceptive and proprioception perceptions or feelings of the body that we have that we didn't know we had. So now that that's been identified, that'll probably change how we're studying back and forth, or even just all of the different rules or ideas we set out for ourselves. Like we hadn't used music before, thinking of specifically what we had been doing, mailing the drawings back and forth, was if you were the owner of the drawings at that moment, then you could just draw whichever part of your body you wanted to draw. Even if you had a headache, you would end up drawing your headache or whatever was going on in your life. So it was never actually identified which part to draw. So in this, we actually were more organized. So to actually say, we're going to draw our sinus and our eye sockets, and to say one half the paper is Margery, one half the paper is Andrea. So now when we're mailing back and forth, we have all these different ideas to add to potentially use.
Also, before this, although we had gone through this program together, we were aware of each other's art, we had never worked together on anything, except for one little drawing up there before we left the program. As just, should we, maybe we should do this. So, we were just receiving drawings and just responding to them. But now, when I receive a drawing from Andrea, she receives something from me, she's going to have a different response to it, having spent this time working on the same drawings together. And she's got a different kind of knowledge of me and I've heard than we did before. So I think that's going to affect our collaborative drawings quite a bit.
Do you have any advice for other artists? I know I talked to someone here. Sorry, I didn't get your name. Karen, who was involved in has been involved in some collaborative drawing. I think it's really interesting in our work in thinking through drawing. We've started these drawing circles where people have sketchbooks that they pass along to each other, which I've been hearing people are having a great time with. I think it's a really, there's a lot of different ways of collaborating with another person or a group. What advice or tips can you give the rest of us about?
I guess if you have the inclination to try it, you should try it with somebody. If you feel like you
be
trust
very
them.
open-minded about whatever comes your way. Whatever is on the paper or going past you, that you're going to add something to. Be very open-minded about what it may be, because people work in many different ways, and you're just adding to that. It's not a time to judge anything. You know what I mean? Be very open-minded and just sort of play along with it, because that's the important part of it too.
Yes, and to let everything be up for grabs for covering over even your favorite little bit. If it gets covered up, that's fine. Yeah, so to let go of the drawing. And I actually found, because we chose a size for our drawing that we're mailing back and forth, they're 12 inches by 18 inches, just because that was easier to have one size for mailing. And so I did a bunch of drawings, and some of them I thought, I kind of like it's just how it is. And then I said, no, sorry, you made this for the collaboration. It goes in the package. Yeah.
So that process of letting go.
Yeah, those
really,
But it has evolved too, I mean, because we started sort of towards the end, sort of not gluing, but stuff sticking on. And I think one of my cats walked over into his cat fur. Yeah, so stuff starting to get stuck on there, on these drawings. Going back and forth, which is fun too, so I'm just trying anything.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any?
I have a question. I have two questions actually. Did you always work on the wall, or did you try it on the floor, on a table?
We worked on a table for 2 drawings.
Yeah.
They're not up actually. We have more drawings than are up.
No, we worked on the wall.
Most of them.
Yeah. I mean, I generally work on the wall, no matter what I'm doing. But for this size, I would think working on the floor would be difficult.
And my other question is, like, how would you divvy up the work? I mean, that's...
Well, that's...
I don't think we want to do
No, we're going to keep it all together and sort of try to go forward with it.
We applied for a show in Vancouver at Artist Run Centers. So if we can show the work there, this work will go there. But I think we'll apply.
Yeah, just because we have all the other work that we've been doing, mailing back and forth, so it can become part of that group of things and continue to grow and see if we can have it shown other places.
Yeah, it's like it has its own life. I don't feel like either of us own this. Out there.
I'm curious, at what level did you do the 2 when you were blindfolded? And also, did you specifically make a decision of just using 2 colors?
We didn't make a decision about colors. I mean, people just picked up whatever they wanted to. We had to use what we had. We had, because we couldn't see.
And what do you mean, what?
Well, at what point did you start with that, or did you do a whole series of?
No, I think it was probably a little over halfway through that we did that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it wasn't.
I just wanted to know, these were over the course of about a month?
Yes.
So over the course of that time, did you notice any changes either individually in how each of you worked or together in terms of how you were working together?
Well, I know what comes to mind when you ask that is the last day of drawing that we had. We did these 2 drawings here and the self-portrait, which is the left side is Margery's self-portrait of the left side of her head, how it feels. The right side is my self-portrait of the right side of my head, how it feels. So we didn't think about this at the time when we decided to do this. But afterwards, we were thinking maybe it's like we're kind of saying goodbye.
Yeah, we
moving to separate sides of the paper.
Yeah, we stopped moving to the other side of the paper. We stayed on our own side. Once we got towards the end of the program, which
just on the last day.
Yeah, it was just an odd thing that happened.
So yeah, it wasn't conscious that we
No.
thought of it maybe the
No,
next
it's
day.
just kind of,
Interesting why that happened.
yeah. So.
Yeah.
But did things change in the way we drew? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
The top, you can tell us, the first drawings we did in the top row here. And I just told you which ones were the last one.
Yeah.
So they seem much more open, maybe, the later ones.
Yeah.
There's just a sense that those are very compressed. It felt to me, when I was looking at the drawings, I don't know about anybody else, but there was a sense of sort of creating these enclosures and then busting them open. It seemed like all the drawings sort of have that theme to them, pulling together and then,
I think that is probably there, and it's one of those things like what you're talking about, it's extraverbal that we don't know that we're saying that.
Something in you knows that that's what's going on.
I think so.
Any other? Yeah.
Well, I'm just fascinated by the blindfold drawings.
Yeah.
And I almost could see that as a jumping off point. Even if you were to mail back and forth and do it blindfolded separately, I'm just very curious to see the way that would
Oh, that would be
end up.
interesting too,
Yeah, I can just see that. in the whole-
I have to get someone else to put the paper up so you don't even see it.
Well, that's right. You have to have it totally blank. Here, just put it up and then leave me in blindfold, show me the edges.
Yeah.
They just have such incredible tension to them too, because the way they dip into the very end of the page and it has so much energy. These do too as well, but I just see something like really wanting to get out. Maybe because you're feeling the edge of the paper as well. Yeah.
It seems to me like the blindfold drawings, like I almost have a sense of like you moving your arm around her body or you going under her arm. You know what I mean? Like there's a real sense of a physical trajectory in those.
There
For me.
definitely was happening. And we also, at some point while we were drawing, we had to say, okay, when are we going to stop? You know, should we stop now? You know, because that became an issue too, because we didn't know what we were doing. But yeah, there definitely was a physical kind of dancing around each other.
They were really fun.
Because you couldn't see what the other person was doing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
You had to just feel their
Yeah,
body.
to feel where they were and.
Once in a while we collided.
Yeah, we did collide and, get out of my way sort of thing, but it seemed to work.
That's what I find so interesting about the video where you're at different vantage points because Andrea's so much taller than you.
Yeah, Andrew's on the left.
You can kind of see those negotiations happening of reaching above or below or behind. I wanted to just, maybe Andrea can speak to this in addition to you guys, but there's a diaristic quality to these. You know, they feel related to writing to me, and I wonder if they feel like diaristic to you. In the process, it's almost like I have this moment of insight into this month of interaction that you guys have had. In fact, one day I came in and they had this wall filled with drawings, and I was like, oh, that's what we're going to do for the exhibition. And they were like, oh, no. I was like, yes, because we can see into your process. We can see this. I felt like I had this moment of insight in this connection between your brain and your hand. It felt very present for me in the way that Andrea was talking about when she walked in, feeling that participatory thing. That for me was more like witnessing this. So I don't know, the connection between writing and drawing, or writing in line or something. I'm not sure there's a question in there, but that sort of was one of the things that occurred to me.
There kind of is, because automatic writing.
Yeah.
And, kind of, it's always been interesting to me, and probably to you as well. And so this kind of instantaneous reaction is kind of like free-flowing writing, like just stream of consciousness writing, I guess. It's a sort of stream of consciousness drawing, I guess, really.
It seems like the disruption of having like somebody else all constantly bumping into you, so in interrupting your train of thought, is really kind of forces this moment-to-moment kind of awareness, right? Which is sort of like you really have that sense of like every mark is in that particular moment. So
for me, it felt a bit more like what analogy I could possibly use, but it was like a dance, or like I gave up control and now I'm going to leap with Margery. And we don't have a parachute. We're just going to jump, and it'll be fine. And we'll just see what happens. And whatever happens between now and we land is the drawing. So I didn't really feel like my drawing was being interfered into. It was like this thing was this is what's happening. So I'm responding to what you're doing in this space of this happening. That's how it was for me. More like, but I can see it being diaristic, so it is recording that moment. Like when you're writing your diary, you're writing what happened. So it's a record of a moment or of a day. thought.
Well, also because you have a kind of a mandate for each set of the drawings, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have that mandate and then you sort of respond to it, but let go of it at the same time.
Exactly.
It's really interesting.
The other thing that I just thought of just watching this video is that I didn't realize until Andrea and I talked about it later, because I draw in two hands, and so she had to sort of deal with that, like this other arm hopping through, and how do you negotiate that? You know, like how do I get where I want to go without all these arms
draw
getting
fast.
draw faster? Yeah. So, you know, and I didn't realize that that was an issue, but it kind of was for her at the beginning.
The only when we drew on the same
Oh,
page
we
at
drew on
the same time.
Right, at the same
But
time.
otherwise,
Right, otherwise it didn't matter because we were individually.
yeah.
So Darko?
Was there a editing process? I mean, is this all of the work you did, or have you? So that's what I was kind of interested in. Also, if you did select,
Mm-hmm.
How did you do the selection?
Patricia
Was
was
it-
our curator.
I see. What, Patricia?
Yes, there's a portfolio of drawings of the rest of the drawings in the back room here, which you can look at, but we did.
But so the editing process, the selection process, because you were talking about being diaristic and so forth. So you don't tear out pages of a diary. Well, maybe you do, but that's rare, right? That almost feels like censorship or self-censorship. So if some were included, others were not, there is some kind of, I guess, value judgment. I mean, maybe you couldn't, physically fit everything. But apart from that, were you looking at these as finished products as we, mostly do our editing, right? Oh, I like this one. Or was it the process? Something about the process of doing it together that you zeroed in on, and I guess it's because.
Well, I will say that this part, the part of the curation part, is part where I become part of the collaboration in a sense, because I didn't just come in and say, all right, we're hanging this one. No, we're not hanging this one. We had a collaborative, a couple of hours where we negotiated how we thought. To me, curation is a conversation between works. And I had sort of an idea of what I was interested in I have a mission for the residency and my ideas about how that would, it fits into that. And so, again, I said before, like, I came in and they had all the drawings up and I said, oh, we have to do that. And they were like, no. And for me, it was about showing sort of a little bit behind the scenes of getting an intimate look into the drawing process. A more intimate look into the drawing process than perhaps a more spare, formal exhibition, like finished exhibition might have given you. So we had some good conversations about that and kind of went back and forth. So I don't think the editing was so much about, taking out quote unquote, lesser drawings or anything like that, but how can we show the fullest depth of the conversation that happened here in the past month? In a way that will be accessible and yet also questioning. Because I hope always that an exhibition is a conversation that also begins, right? So there's a conversation between them that happened over the past month, and now there's a conversation between this conversation and all of you, and there's a conversation between the drawings and all of you. And that's important to me. Those conversations are what's important to me. So I think in my thinking about curation, and you guys please respond to your version of that experience, was about that the drawings are a conversation with each other, and they're a conversation with the past month, and they're a conversation with the gallery and the sort of the things that happen here, as in the larger sense. So I have the kind of meta conversation, and then there's the direct conversation and the intimate conversations. Does that make sense? Right? It's a lot of conversations.
Well, it's funny because when I came in here yesterday, it was pretty much what's up here now, but there was a table. It was a little messier. It was slightly messier. But I think the more time that I spend with the drawings, the more I see like the distinct, like every, the blind drawings are very distinct. They sort of relate to each other, but aren't, and each of these rows are very distinct, and that set over there is very distinct, and these last drawings. So it's really interesting because you can really see very different things happening in all these like separate groupings. So, yeah.
Did you feel constrained by the size? I mean, did you not want to get much larger?
No, I didn't feel that way. Did you? Did you notice that?
No.
I think because we decided when they were finished, they are 22 by 30 inches, so they're not tiny. And when they were finished, so it's not like we needed more room to expand out. I think it didn't feel constrained. Although I don't mind working on something bigger sometimes. Maybe sending you a giant roll.
Do you guys want to say anything about the curation, that process of kind of determining what we wanted to show and what we didn't want to show?
Well, as Patricia said, when she was talking about the grid, towards the end, when we had all the artwork up everywhere, it was really hard to come in here and actually do any work because it was so overwhelming to have this stuff jumping off the walls at us. So we had to move things so that we could continue working. So when Patricia said, oh, we need to put this whole wall on the grid, we were both like, oh my God, we won't be able to be there at the opening, it'll be too overwhelming. So that was, but then in the course of the discussion, you know, Patricia knows the gallery, she has a sense of, you know, when she started talking about the walls pinging, right, the walls pinging against each other, it made so much sense that I just said, you know, sure.
Well, having a quiet wall next to a
having
boisterous
those quiet spots
Yeah.
made it more, you know, made sense. I hadn't thought about it that far. I couldn't get past the grid, and so, but once we started discussing it, and Patricia was really explaining how she saw the room and the work, and how someone would come in and see it, it made a lot more sense, and I trusted her judgment. So that's the way
I
I
think it's
felt
always
about it.
important for me, probably for you, for the viewer to have some sort of an experience to be able to interact with the work or to feel the body in the work. If we put all the drawings up there, it would be so overwhelmed with the cacophony of the situation that you wouldn't be able to experience that. And that would be a shame. I love that your nervous system's being activated.
And I actually really like this grid now.
Yeah, I like it too.
You know, so. Yeah.
It feels very organized, you know? It feels like there's definitely like that living energy, which is kind of pulsing off the walls, but then it's also kind of, you can see, you know, different things happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Any last final questions before we wrap up?
Do you have a question? What's your question?
I know you listen to heavy metal bands for the second row, and I know how you feel about heavy metal.
Right.
And I know you listen to classical music for those four. What kind of music did you listen to for the other ones?
Those were the only two up on the walls
You did listen
that
to
we
music.
listened to music.
We did listen.
We did too. We had another, we would listen to music, but not that we were attending to the music while we were making the drawings. There was another set that's in the envelope in the back that we were listening to dark music, you know, music that's used in like video games and things, fantasy stuff that's like dark music. We listened to that too, and that had a different, very different feel to it.
Otherwise, we were choosing music that wouldn't interfere with.
Or wouldn't irritate the other
Would
person.
Yeah. Music irritates the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Well, Andrea, you have any last? You don't have to.
No, it's just, to me, it's really exciting because I really appreciate being invited to talk with you guys about your project, because I think it's very inspiring, and actually for me as an educator, I think these kinds of collaborations can really kind of bust through, like just the way these drawings are kind of busting through. I think they can bust through a lot of inhibitions and sort of egotism and really get to like the important stuff. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about that.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.